You know, when we talked about justices earlier, and one of the things we give the Trump administration, and you just said too, a lot of credit for, is the justices he appointed. 3 of those justices were part of overturning Roe v. Wade.
Yes.
And they threw it back to the states, the elected representatives, and a great answer to prayer, 50-year prayer for that to happen. What do you believe the federal government's role? If you're president of the United States, what's the federal government's role in advancing the sanctity of human life? Obviously, we partner with SBA Pro-Life. This is a cornerstone issue of ours. What is the role of the next president as it comes to advancing a culture of life in this country?
Well, the first thing I want to say is I think it took the courage of conviction for those justices. There was the stare decisis came up a lot, let the law stand. And I often find when we resort to Latin phrases in the law, it means we're actually squeamish about saying what we actually mean. Just say it in English, let the law stand. No, I will not let that law stand because it was never actually the correct interpretation of the Constitution or the law itself, which shows how important those judgeships are. So that brings me to the first and most important answer, is continue to appoint federal judges who actually share a deep conviction in what the Constitution says, rather than inventing things that the Constitution does not say, such as a substantive due process right. Number one, responsibility. And that's constitutionally codified most important. Second is actually, next most important, but actually is underappreciated, I think, is to set a cultural tone of standing for life. All forms of life, all life, including unborn life. And what I mean by that is I think we can talk about this issue in ways. I think, if I may say so, Bob, I'm proud of the success I think I've had in this country of probably bringing more people along with us, amongst people who never you would have thought would have come along with us, by just talking about the issue a little differently. So speaking of Dobbs, Clarence Thomas did this well. What did he say? He brought the case of a woman, pregnant woman walking down the street. She's assaulted. The unborn child dies as a consequence. I'll challenge you to find one person in this country who says that that criminal does not deserve to be held liable for the death of that unborn life. Hard pressed. Call yourself DR, Democrat, Republican, pro-choice, pro-life. You would be hard pressed to find somebody to say that person doesn't deserve criminal liability. What does that say? Most of us share pro-life instincts because it is grounded in the truth. And so then now, once we've established that, now we just need to cut through the veneer that we've created, women's rights versus men's rights. Well, now let's have an open conversation about walking the walk when it comes to being pro-life. Let's have a conversation about adoption, about emergency pregnancy centers and the role of education and the role of support. I, for one, am open to a conversation even about the role of pulling in child care, pro-family policies that help people voluntarily also have already gotten to yes. Countries like Hungary have taught us a lot that we can learn from, and actually the rate of elective abortions has just plummeted to near, darn close to, as sloped down to zero as you're going to get in that country. And then I think you want to talk about women's rights versus men's rights, because that's the hang-up for most people. I am in favor of state laws here, but state laws nonetheless, that attach greater sexual responsibility to men in cases of you have technology that helps us. Confirmed paternity tests on a genetic basis. This shouldn't be about men versus women. It's not a women's rights issue. It is a human rights issue. And what I find, Bob, is that it completely changes the tenor of the discussion when we authentically are actually willing to talk about not only what are we against, but what are we for. These are the things that we can be for. So between federal judge appointments, between actually setting that national tone, and then the easy stuff. I say the easy stuff, but it's important. The federal government, our taxpayer dollars, are literally funding abortions by the many, many thousands per state from the federal government. Federal funding going to Planned Parenthood. This is unconscionable. It's a betrayal of trust in our conviction as citizens in the federal government that we fund with our taxpayer dollars. That too is something that we should be able to cut. Those are some of the easiest answers, and I think answers that you'll hopefully hold me to when I'm in that office.